Hi everyone, and welcome to the last transmission. We've been waiting a while to do this remote viewing results show. I'm joined tonight by a good friend of ours, Dr. Martin Abbott. Hi Martin, how you doing?
Yeah, very well. Nice to see you, Chris, and obviously everyone who's watching as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a few in. We'll just wait. I should probably update everybody with Paul's situation. As you may already know, Paul's been suffering from his back condition for a few weeks now, and it's not showing any signs of easing either. So let's wish Paul well. He may be in the chat tonight. He might pop in. Who knows? Because I know he's struggling to rest properly and sleep. So he's probably out and about, and he'd definitely be listening to this because he's also put his remote viewing entry in. So, Martin, before we get to sort of revealing, I'm going to put everybody's entry up on screen one at a time, and we can sort of have a look at it and give our. I'll give my expert analysis on it because I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing. So, before we do that, can you talk us through a little bit through the SRI process and what was involved there and what they were doing?
Yeah. So for all of those people who didn't manage to see the first show, SRI is the Stanford Research Institute. So this was a team that was looking in the 70s and 80s at remote viewing, which is obviously that sort of spying technique for the government at the time, to try and see remotely what's going on in a different place, remote to you. So that could be in time or place. And the main people in that were Russell Targ, and there's the Third Eye Spies film, which you can watch about it. Really interesting film to watch. And Ingo Swann was one of the main people in that. And there's a great book called Penetration that he wrote and co-authored, and that's about his experiences and techniques about what was going on. Essentially, this is the SRI program had people, novices, experts, and middle of the road kind of people doing it. They created a technique in order to make the process reliable and objective and repeatable. For the novices, they would have a collection of 300 photos. Randomly, they would select them, and with either a random number generator or random numbers, they would put numbers on there. It would be 2 sets of 4 numbers, and that would be in the room next to where the process was going on, so next to where the viewer was. And they would try and see if that viewer could spy or see, remote view, the image. And we have tried to do or replicate that in this process. Now, the SRI created a document for the American military. It's about 80 pages long. You don't need to go through it. I've kind
80?
of 80, yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And they say none of it is research or anything that's reproducible. This is objective assumptions based on what we saw. But they say that it is, for certainly some of the experts, beyond a p-value of 0.05, which means basically less than 5% chance of being wrong in terms of their outcomes. And essentially the process starts off with access. So that's where we identify a target. Now, the target has to be something which has unique characteristics, or if it's going to be in a location, I want you to look at this specific type of thing in that area. So if it's a building you want to look at in that area, you say, well, I really want you to look at a building, see if there's anything in it, what's the electrics in it, can you see anything, is there anything you can read in there, that kind of thing. Has to have a unique characteristic, ideally with a certain time, a certain place, a certain immutable characteristic that you can only get from that kind of thing. Now, it might be if you're a spy and you want to say, well, look, I want you to read this document in this filing cabinet. You might say, well, look, I want you to go into this room in this building. I want you to read if there's anything in that cabinet, right? That's the kind of thing that they were trying to say. But take home message is it needs to have a unique characteristic or something that you need to focus on with your mind. You need to establish and describe the target, obviously, and supply the stimulus through a neutral word. So when you first start remote viewing, it appears that the most amount of information, or the best information rather, is at the first moment that you get the image in your mind. So the first few seconds, and you can stimulate that image to come up, or your kind of willingness to try and read that image by creating a stimulus word. So someone could say to you, okay, these are the numbers, and I'm going to say the word target, and every time you hear the word target, I want you to think of those numbers and get some images. All right. We didn't do that, but hopefully we got some good images, or at least some good responses. That can help the stimulus process, because it's like this: the stimulus goes up, you get some good outcomes, and then what we call noise comes in, and this is your mind coming in to tell you what you think the image might be, and then it goes up again, and it lasts a few seconds. And according to this research, it seems to suggest that the best images are not actually the ones where you think, oh, I saw this incredible image of the Taj Mahal or whatever it might be. I've seen some of the pictures and they're really good, but it's not all wrong. But it might be that that's what we call interpretive overlay. This is where you create a story of what you think it might be. And the best viewing is where you're seeing kind of nebulous concepts, so lines, almost like a pictogram. And we call this initial targeting, where you get to it, you open the channel to the place, we use those numbers, and then we're sort of bit grabbing. We're grabbing bits of information about it. And we call that, when we look at these things, called access. So access 1 is where you get the first image. Access 2, you might get this overlay. Usually that's, we ignore that actually. And then there's access point 3, 4, 5, and 6. And at each of these access points, you try and remote view more and more. More of the pictogram reveals itself, and you can overlay on top of each access, then, you know, a better interpretation of what you're reading or what you're seeing. And if
sorry, just to put in, Martin, you mentioned there earlier, is it the overlays?
Yeah.
I mean, guys, anyone that experienced this, and I know a few of you messaged me with this, that was like, and you also mentioned that it like noise, I suppose. Yeah,
it's what it's called.
And it was interesting when you said the word target, and you've got this like brief period of time. Did you say a few seconds where that's the optimum time for, you know, something to come into your subconscious, is it?
Yeah.
So and then after that, my mind started filling the gaps in. As soon as I got something, a few seconds, my mind would automatically, and I guess this is something that we're training over time. We can train ourselves not to do that.
Yeah. So for novices, it would happen 80 to 100% of the time, according to the research.
Wow. Okay.
People who were medium at it, it was 50%. And for those who are experts, it would be 20%. So it still happens to the best of them. And of course, if you want to try and improve your thoughts or sensing of the pictogram or image that you've got, or the line or whatever it might be, you could even draw on the line, and it would maybe give you some sensation of what you're feeling. So remember, this is not looking at it with our eyes. We're not allowing our brain to tell us, okay, I've just seen something, this is what I saw. It's, you're kind of detecting images. So they even broke it down further. So obviously, sorry, let me just go back. So we got the access in all of these points. We're trying to objectively describe what these images, these bits might be, and then we're qualifying it. So the observer or the recorder that I'm sort of conducting the research might challenge you about, well, what does this line really feel like? Was it straight? Do you think it's part of something? Is it solid? Is this line actually a demarcation between two things like water or solid? Is it a wall? Is it do you see what I mean? The pictogram builds itself as I challenge you as the operator about what you're seeing. Yeah. And they even broke it down further, where they could tell you, well, look, if you see in the pictogram some angular lines, that's going to be something more like a steep cliff or a structure. A curved line might be an unbounded area or channel. A straight line would be a boundary or something between land or water, or some sort of interface. So if it was even a small object, the interface within that object to try and build the picture of it. Irregular waving lines could be a rolling terrain or hills. Jagged lines could be hills or mountain, so something a bit taller. And obviously dots, light or dark or shaded area, giving you some sense of depth or color. Now, when I was doing it, I would not necessarily do it using the SRI thing. I mean, to be honest, I was doing this telepathy technique, which is probably a little bit less accurate, where you would try and sense the image, and I think you tacitly start to do the SRI process. You start to see lines waving, you see movement, you feel movement. So in some of the images that we got back, or some of the things from, say, Lee Roscoe, he mentioned a cross, and that it was coming and going. And I thought that was quite interesting, and we'll see why shortly. But it was those people who seemed to produce, who who sensed an image or sensed structure to the image, a line of the image, or the rudimentary components of the image, seem to do better. That's what it seems to me. And certainly if we get a cohort of people who can reliably do something similar, you could start doing remote viewing, all sorts of things. It doesn't have to be that one person gets it right, but if 10 people get it nearly right, you get close to what might be the answer, which I found really fascinating as a component of this. Anyway, sorry.
I just asked while this question's there, Matt. Have you carried out this in a professional setting? No, you entered a competition.
Yeah, so I've not done it professionally. I'm not in the forces. I've never been in the forces, so don't think I'm sort of some spy from somewhere. I'm not that. I'm just a simple GP living in London, 2 kids, wife, partner, etc. I got interested in this. I'm sure people know, but essentially my first wife died of cancer. So I got interested in what goes on after death, consciousness, that kind of thing. And like everybody in this field, you develop a stepwise progression into other components of the field, and it all revolves around, in my opinion, consciousness. And I think Mr. Bigelow thinks similar, because that's kind of what he's looking at now. But part of the process of learning and understanding unusual phenomena, parapsychology, paraphenomena, you get into the realms of remote viewing, consciousness related stuff, NDEs, near-death experiences. I'm really interested. I'm quite interested in that. I'm not going to say really interested because I don't want to be labelled as the person that likes NDEs, but as a doctor, you kind of get used to that.
Yeah.
And of course, having a partner that's died, you wonder, well, what's next? Is it just the end, or are they knocking about somewhere? I even wrote I'm writing a trilogy, a sci-fi trilogy, and in that I'm putting a lot of urban UFO stuff and some stuff about spirituality and that kind of thing. Book 1's available, little plug. Book 2.
Cool.
It's called Mobius, after my son. So if you're interested, have a quick read. It's fun.
Matty, make sure that you, after this, get me the links and we'll put them in the description about it, because I didn't know that. So that's very interesting.
I don't tell lots of people about it. There's only about 6 books sold, so I'm not fussed. It was more about, it was something I had to do. I actually dreamt it, funnily enough. I dreamt the whole series in my mind. Just woke up one morning, I had it all there, knew what was going to happen and everything. It's crazy, really crazy.
So, I mean, some people would say that was a bit of a download, would they? A channeled, possibly.
Well, do you know what? I don't know. But I can tell you, I woke up and I had to write this book and it was in my mind, all of it. Crazy. Anyway.
Carry on.
I'm not in the forces. I haven't done it professionally, but I'm very interested in consciousness for a good reason. And I think it's all connected. And often when you look at this kind of thing, UFOs and things moving interstellar travel, that kind of thing. Often you'll hear from other researchers, they say that their whistleblowers, whatever, are saying that the only way you can travel in an interstellar way is to remote view the process of the actual direction of travel. Some people say that. And obviously sometimes when dealing with alien aircraft, according to what the other people say, not what I've seen, trying to be objective, trying to be scientific, they say that consciousness is the way that you control or manage the vehicles, the aircraft. Or the interstellar craft. So I'm open. I'm open is the answer. I'm a scientist, but I'm open to understanding the unusual. And certainly this seems to have merit in scientifically speaking, with a p-value of less than 0.05. That means that it's less likely than chance to just occur. And certainly when I was remote viewing on the there's a sort of a little competition you can do. It's called Remote Viewing Challenge, or I can give you the information for anyone who wants to do it. It's really fun. And as I say, you get a negative mark and you have to choose between 2 pictures after you remote viewed the 8 numbers, and you can decide negatively marking. Now that's really difficult because you can lose marks, what the image might be. Okay. Now, as I say, and as you just said, Chris, if you are not focused properly and you are interrupted and you don't have a quiet mind, me too, you'll have 10 wrong answers in a row, and it's so heartbreaking. But I was doing that for 2 years, and when I really focused and meditated properly and got my mind into the right zone and did almost some pictograms, because you tacitly do it. Essentially, you start thinking, well, I can see a line, I can see, or I can feel life or energy. I can see green. I feel like I can feel foliage. I sense foliage. And then you'll get an image and think, oh, it's a cactus, right? Okay, it must be the cactus then, right? Or you see a gold in the image and you see a gold dragon and you think, oh, it must be the dragon then. Or I see a curvy line like this. Oh, it's the dragon's, tail. I was quite good at it at one point. I was got 70% accuracy, 70%, negative mark. That's insane. And then obviously you get interrupted and it goes down to 60%, 55%. You think, oh, that's not so good. But the fun thing about it is you get $10 from the people that run this show. If you get if you're in the top 10, or if you get number 1 in that month, or you're number 1 in the world that month. And I made a bit of cash on that.
It sounds great. I mean, to be fair, I think interestingly, I watched the documentary that you mentioned, the one with Russell Targ,
Third Eye Spies,
Third Eye Spies, and I also was watching some tutorials online, and they're doing it now. Their businesses are doing the stock market using these techniques.
Yeah,
and some of them are doing very, very well. So there's obviously, like you say, and the military. And when you watch that documentary, you get to realize that literally anybody, because they try and do it in that documentary without spoiler alerts, they bring the military a question in the process, aren't they? And then they say, okay, then we'll just bring someone random in, and they do, and this person ends up being one of the best. So it just goes to show that I think with this experiment we did, there is an element of disappointment, because you think I was so positive at the beginning, and then when all that noise came in, I was just like, right, I've had enough, start again tomorrow. And that was the pattern. And then it started. I don't know if any of you guys felt this out there. I made the mistake, because I'm very busy during the day. I made the mistake of doing it before bed, which is, for my brain, is not a good idea, because I was just up in the night and then all the overlay stuff and noise, that's all it was. And then you're trying to distinguish between the two, I suppose. But again, it's just experience. So I'm happy to continue this. And we did one of the remote viewing tasks because is there anything stopping us for you guys? Is there anything, if you guys are interested, starting a league table, making this a 10-minute section at every show where we just quickly go through the results, 10, 15 minutes every time we do a show. But we did talk about remote viewing underneath Bempton.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's so cool.
Yeah, so that would be really cool to do. Exciting. A lot of noise already. So just acknowledge that there's a lot of noise already in everybody's brain at the moment about what's underneath Bempton. But again, it doesn't need to be, all surrounding Bempton. It can be anywhere, can't it? But I just thought with Paul's, exactly.
You could remote view the orbs in New Jersey. You could do all sorts, couldn't you? Some people are apparently doing it or trying to.
Absolutely, and I think. And that'd be something Paul would be fascinated in, I would have thought, when he's back to fitness. So fingers crossed that won't be long. So shall we go through some of these?
Let's do it. Yeah? Let's do it. Go for it.
Okay. So the first result is from Ron. Oh, I've got the bloody. That's Ron Booth is first. Thanks, Ron, for your entry.
Ron. Good one.
Yeah, and. There's very similar to myself. He did a number of attempts there, and you can see that the Mount. I think he mentioned Everest, and then what he said in his message to me that he Googled it, and it was similar to the attached image that he'd drawn. But is that a mistake, Martin, going on and having a look?
No, I mean, look, I can't draw for toffee, but the thing about it is, when you then, and I purposely didn't tell you about the pictogram element of it, because I wanted to see what people could do and what they'd make of it. But essentially, for me, there's jagged rocks, there's jagged lines. So could that be a tall structure, a tall building? When I think of if I was doing that, I would think of something high up. It doesn't necessarily have to be a mountain. It's something high up, and then something shaped like a ball with maybe lines on the ball. That's the kind of thing I would have been picking up. Campfire, that would have been, there must be something with energy in it. Could it be electric? Could it be fire? Or could it be just movement that I'm sensing? I don't know. Taj Mahal, that just means big building to me, possibly a white structure, because Taj Mahal for me is essentially a white thing with multiple elements to it. So the pictogram there would be something tall, maybe an element that's round as well, something with movement, and maybe it's white, something like that. That's kind of how I might have pictured that if we were doing it with an SRI hat on. But on the whole, yeah, I mean, this is where the brain gives the interpretive overlay. And there's been a bit of noise. Do you know what I mean? So you've got the pictogram, but you've put an image to it, and that's not the process. Unless
fundamentally, you were saying that it's about also as the person doing the remote view.
Yeah,
we've also got to get familiar with what these lines mean and all the rest of it, haven't we? So again, it is a process. So
exactly.
We shouldn't be too hard on ourselves.
Yeah, there's no judgment about this. I got it wrong loads at the beginning. And it was just probably sheer luck initially, but then you start getting better. You start understanding what your brain is trying to detect and pick up, rather than try and interpret it using what your senses tell you now. You know, the noise that we talk about is, you know, the stress of the day. You know, what certain shapes appear to you normally in your day-to-day life, that kind of thing. You know, what smells might say to you, what all these sorts of things. What colors would normally, you know, Taj Mahal, white, dum, there you go. But it may be a white structure, but not the Taj Mahal. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but would that be considered somewhat of a success then?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Brilliant.
I mean, Ron's done all right there, I think, but we'll see what the picture is.
Okay.
But I think, but likewise, I don't want to go the other way and interpret that everyone's got it right just because they got a little bit of it right, for example.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But if you think to yourself, and everyone who's done the remote view will be able to justify it to themselves. Okay, I saw some straight lines, it was this. I saw something rotating or whatever it was that. And that is really quite close, or it's not close. If you've got nowhere near it, well, you just didn't pick it up that time. Maybe the noise was too much, you weren't in the right zone, or you just weren't in the mindset for it that day. It doesn't mean that you can't do it, because the SRI research does say that novices can get better. They become medium, and then you become an expert. The more you do it, the better you do it. The more focus you have on it, the better you are interpreting. You know, it's changeable, and people who first start doing it can be great, but it doesn't mean if you're not great at it right at the beginning that you're not going to be great later on. It is absolutely possible, according to their 80-page document, which you can read.
Cool. Okay, good. Okay, next up is Rav.
Nice one, Rav. So he's given us a picture, interpretive overlay potentially a little bit here. Although, you know, if he's sensed straight lines, a tall structure, you know, some sort of lines to the side of the structure. I mean, that's what I would be interpreting there. And his brain's pieced together that, you know, he's got this big building in front of him. Okay. There's also some kind of circular thing at the beginning, or some sort of circular thing down at the bottom there. You can see. And there's obviously a person in there as well. He's sensed people or a person. So that's probably what I take from that. He's sensed air or sky above as well, because he's not just taking a picture of a building close up. He's taking a picture of it sort of open. So I would say that's quite interesting. But that's how you might want to interpret your ideogram as you go through that, rather than that shape. I mean, the other way you might have done that, if the ideogram had kind of two windows and a nose there, you might have said, oh, is it a cat? That's how you could get fooled, you know.
I see. Yeah. Okay, next up is Kevin A. So Kevin says, just before the meditation, so I got a strong impression of a beach, and in particular a palm tree. When I subsequently rewatched the episode and repeat the process, I still had a beach, although this time with the addition of a boat and a heart-shaped pebble at the edge of the water.
Got you. So the heart shape might be important. The boat, I'm not sure. Water, potentially. The palm tree is quite clear as a structure. So you'd say something tall with a bit of a messel at the top. So that is interesting. That's interesting. I would say that Kevin might be doing quite well there.
Yeah, it's weird, but I was getting that. I was getting the pylon, the windmill, the lighthouse, and then I just were getting like 10 of these things, and I just thought, I just can't cope with them all. I just threw them all out, because I'd watched a YouTube tutorial and it said what you said: do not draw pictures.
Yeah.
Or in the early stages, so I didn't.
Yeah. But the thing is that you saw repeated images of what was it, windmill and stuff, and it's interesting because a few people have said, you know, I mean, I thought palm trees similar to a windmill, I thought a cross is quite similar to a windmill. It's kind of that shape, isn't it? It's got that kind of
yeah.
to it.
Yeah.
And I found that quite interesting that a number of people had that kind of image or ideogram coming up. And of course, they've got this interpretive overlay bringing this palm tree.
Yeah.
And it could be a palm tree. I'm not going to tell you what the picture is. No. But I mean, that's why I said to you, try to think of structure, try to think of image, try to think of lines and drawings like that way, because you may find that gives you a better outcome. Anyway, what's the next one? But good on. Well done.
Yeah, well done. The next one is Margaret Owen. My impression was perpendicular black lines, maybe metal railings with spikes on the top, and large fat birds pecking in the snow on the ground.
Okay. Well, again, that implies to me some sort of animal or human or whatever it might be doing something, maybe near the ground. Spikes and railings. Yeah, I mean, it's all perpendicular black lines. I mean, there's lots of lines in the image. I'm sure there might be some of those. I don't want to tell you what the image is.
Right.
So yeah, it's an ideogram. Unless you do it again and again and try and piece it together, it can be difficult. But as a first remote view, a lot of people are kind of getting similar. If I was to interpret them, similar ideograms or similar structures, which I mean, they're putting in like the sea and bits and bobs, which you could say might be overlay or whatever, because they're kind of piecing it together. So I saw this palm tree, so there must have been a beach, there must have been the sea, right? So that's the kind of thing that you have to try and detect, and you'll be detecting it as well. If you do it next time, what do I throw out? What is real? What is not real? What is appropriate? What is not appropriate for this ideogram?
Yeah, well, I've already, and I'm sure everybody listening has already learned, things already about the process. So that's good. It's great. So next is Declan W. A window divided into 4 panes through which I could see open space, possibly the sea, but unsure of that part. An awareness of 2 figures either side of the window. Again, unsure of this. Oddly enough, an X shape or windmill, all somewhat shadowy and vague.
Isn't that uncanny? And what did I say about SRI's report saying that the best targeting, the fact that you're on the right image, is that it's usually nebulous, not quite obvious what the image is. So if you see an obvious image, it's probably interpretive overlay. If you see something that is shadowy and vague, and I just saw this kind of shape like a windmill or whatever, that's probably going to be the image. And you have to then realize in your mind's eye, actually, that's the kind of thing I need to focus on. That's the kind of thing that's going to flash into my head, and it's just for a few seconds, and then it's going to disappear, because it is that kind of, I've got it, and then I've gone again. Oh, it's got it again, and it's gone again. You just see what I mean? So that's why they go back to the image. They did it 6 times, but you could do it as many times as you like. And trying to filter out. Remember, it's hard to filter out. It's the first time you've done it. Filter out what this image might be with the pictogram or images that suddenly flash in your head, and it might not be the exact image. It might be something that the structure of it is the image rather than the image itself. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Next up is Kristoff. So he's really saying he really struggled to achieve anything, having not done anything like this before. However, for a brief moment, I saw an image of 2 triangles pointing towards each other, which my mind interpreted as a butterfly. But he said, which is probably a bias, as I am a wildlife enthusiast.
Okay, so a bit of noise there, but I mean, look, it's a good ideogram, it's a good pictogram, isn't it, of what might the structure be? And it'd be nice to remember that kind of structure, because for me that almost looks a bit like a windmill, doesn't it? Could be the things of a windmill. I'll tell you, it's not a windmill. I can tell you it's not a windmill, but let's just look at the picture later. But it's not a windmill, but a lot of people are getting this kind of similar structure, which is really, I find fascinating, actually, knowing what the picture is. Let's go for the next one. Well done. Okay. Well done. And
yeah, brilliant, that, Kristoff. Well done.
Excellent.
So next up is Andy R. An oil tanker or a similar large ship pitching in rough seas.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, he said an oil tanker or similar large thing moving around. So for me, that would be, there could be some noise there, but it could be an image of something moving or rolling or doing something like that. And it's I like the sense of movement, in the sense that the image might have some movement. So and he's got a large structure. So I think that's not a bad remote view based on what we see in the image later on. So yeah, that's not bad. Well done. But again, it's about the pictogram or image rather than, you know, because it may be that he sends to sea because he thought he saw a tanker. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Another thing.
It.
Yeah, this is really interesting. I'm making a mental note of this already. Yeah, very interesting.
Cool. So don't let your mind run away with yourself. Otherwise, you'll be disappointed with the outcome, although you were probably there. Do you see what I mean? You know, you were the target.
Yeah, or at least a good enough result to you know, to say that it's something positive, which a lot of this seems to be. Without, you know, I don't know what it is, so I'm really looking forward. There's nothing else but think about it, to be fair. So,
excellent.
Yeah. So next up is Louise.
A seal or sea lion in waves in the ocean. So it's another ocean one, which is interesting. You know, because there's a few people have said sea and ocean, and it just makes me wonder: were they detecting movement for that, and certainly they detected some sort of animal or something alive. So. Interesting. I find that interesting. Yeah. There's a few people.
Yeah. Very interesting. Thanks, Louise, for your entry. And next up is Stargazer Eternal, who most of us know.
Mate. He made me laugh with this one. What is at that location? Please, God, let it be the image. The actual image of the picture. Oh my God, that would be so good. That's what made me laugh. Not the fact that you did it, Stargazer. Brilliant work. Something tall, some sort of tall thing, a tuning device. I picture, you know, radar things with, you know, like a tall, long thing like that with bits on the top. You know, a mound of earth and a stream. I mean, that maybe senses movements. He's put their metal fence, crisscross bars. Yeah, I mean, when you see the image, you know, these are all sort of pictograms of what you might detect looking at this image. So let's, we'll. Yeah, that's not a bad one, that Stargazer, to be honest. Not a bad one.
Okay, next up's my wife, Loz, who's moderating for us tonight.
Thanks for moderating, Loz. Nice work. Taj Mahal. There you go. Another Taj Mahal. I mean, that's two.
Yeah, I mean, and she did say this after we'd had that conversation. It was the first thing she said to me as we went down. She just said, "I've just got Taj Mahal," and a few people have said that. The first thing that came into my mind was, not Taj Mahal, but whatever. They were already. And is that, Martin? Is that something? Just talking about something, or just us just talking about the numbers, is that something that happens that an image may well just flash into your mind like that?
Yeah. So according to the literature, the SRI team seem to say that as soon as the image is attached to that target, your subconscious has access to that target. So you don't even need to say the numbers. You are theoretically already connected to it if you want to remote view it, already connected subconsciously. Cool. So yeah, I mean, it might be that your brain automatically thinks of this image as the Taj Mahal. Obviously, that's how your brain interprets it when you remote view it, but it's maybe not the Taj Mahal. But whatever it is, it's white, it's tall, it's got a big bit on the top, and you know, that's for most people, that's the Taj Mahal, isn't it? A white thing with a big round ball on the top.
Yeah.
Right. Let's see what the image is when we see the image. Might be interesting. Some people are going to be surprised. Keep going.
Okay. Next up is Mark Morgan.
Good pictogram. It's cold. There's some movement to it, and there's kind of almost like a triangular tall structure. Yeah, that's what I get from that. That's good. Although it looks quite similar to the last transmission logo at the top there. Hopefully that's not noise or interpretive overlay, but hey ho.
Sorry, guys.
I think it's good, Mark. I think it's good.
Okay, next up is Dragonborn.
Nice
sailing boat, another boat.
Yeah, it's again movement. I see movement, and because sailing boats are often associated with movement, you see. So I just wonder if people are sensing movement on this one, and obviously a tall structure with kind of stuff coming out like this. You know, that would be a sail, wouldn't it? And on an ideogram, it would be something like this. So Mark's last one had that, didn't it? And when you see the image, you might think, well, that's quite close. So there'll be bits in all of these pictograms that people think, wow, I actually did get this kind of shape or a line or something like that, something tall or whatever, that kind of matches, kind of goes with it. So again, I can't stress enough, don't be disappointed on the first image. There'll be elements on this where you have been successful, and it'll probably be interpretive overlay that's just meant that you've assumed, your brain has assumed it's this, and you thought, okay, well, it's definitely that. It must be that. and it's not. It may not be, but you've got elements of this right. I can, knowing the image, I know what I'd be looking for in an ideogram. And a lot of people have done quite well. You'd be surprised.
Cool. Okay, I'm looking forward to it. So next up is it's Lee Roscoe.
Hey, Lee, this is good. And he left me a voicemail saying that thing was coming and going, rotating around and moving. So that was quite interesting. And I find this one really interesting. Really interesting. Yeah. It's a good ideogram, a tall cross floating around on the right hand side, and he said it was coming and going. That movement made me think that was quite good.
Yeah, he left me a message as well, and when I heard that, I thought that's very, it's very descriptive. I didn't get any sense of movement at all, but at the same time, I don't know. I think in my mind, if I'd already, do you know what, Martin? I think I'd already sort of decided kind of what it was, on a number of occasions. So I think by doing that, was I inadvertently just shutting the door and everything else, I suppose, wasn't I?
Yeah, I mean that is the epitome of interpretive overlay. You've decided what it is before you've even really got the ideogram sorted out. But the funny thing about that is that if you can imagine, a lot of these pictures have got straight lines like this or a line like this. Everyone's sort of picturing something that's quite tall. There's a round element to it. The antenna thing, that's a tall thing with bits and bobs off the top of it. We've got straight lines, we've got railings, we've got metal, do you know what I mean? These are all sorts of sensors or images that have floated into people's minds, and they're all very similar, which is quite interesting to me. Although the answers may not be exactly correct, there's themes running through this, which maybe I'm interpreting because I know what the answer is, and I want people to do well. But there is an element of this that I think people will understand that not everyone's going to get it right, but two, they probably got bits right. Okay, and it's not an exact science. If it was, we'd all be rich, making money.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Doing some remote viewing.
So next up, you might have heard of this guy.
Oh, him. Oh, yeah. I heard he's got a bad back. Get well soon, Paul, of course.
Yeah, get well soon, Matt.
And again, he's got these jagged lines. So it's something tall, something high up. It's daylight. He's put daylight, which is interesting because it could have been dark. There's an element of snow or white there. And it's a cold place. It's high up. So this is again interesting because he's got sensation going on. He's got temperature and obviously light and dark, and it's kind of a tall structure. So again, people automatically think Alpine Mountain. We've already had Alpine Mountain before as well. So yeah, I mean, again, similar themes. But again, your brain automatically goes to something because you sense something. And that's kind of what my take-home message was when I first started doing it. And you assume stuff. You assume too much.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's mine. Not like one go was enough, Martin.
Again, look, I mean, you've got this. I mean, the ideogram there is very similar to what other people have done. They've got diagonal lines. You've got lines going up. So that could be the antenna. It could be the palm tree. You've got a leaf shape. That could be the palm tree as well. Or some sort of thing at the top of something. You've got lines, again, more lines. So you sensed lines, but what could lines be? It could be pathways. It could be ropes. It could be, what could it be? Yeah, there could be lots of things that could be lines. Yeah. Could it be the spokes of a wheel kind of thing? Do you see what I mean? These are
I know that. Yeah. I think I'll be less likely to, because I think subconsciously what I was doing from the first one that I got initially, right away, I got the two diagonals, and I think actually subconsciously I was just the next one I was just continuing the thing on. But again,
that is interesting because when you resense something according to literature, it would say that is a good accuracy component, and you're then able to really digest and understand what that ideogram component was, that bit checking was. And often when you get the correct answer or you're targeting correctly, you get a flood. It says a flood of information. So a flood of bits. So lots of information about that line. Oh, that line was actually a rope, or it was a railing on a school gate or something like that. That's the kind of thing that you get a flood of information associated with it. And as I said, when you draw, which I got my pen in my hand, that's why I remember it. If you draw along that ideogram, you may get further information about the component of that target. And as the operator, that's really interesting. Yeah.
Okay, and this is the last one.
Oh, right. Okay.
And this is Brett Byro, a friend of ours. I saw the numbers and thought of a child's drawing of a house, a garden, and a cat sat in it.
Interesting. Okay. In that, I think of something in something. So again, a house, a tall structure, some green in the image because there's a garden, and then obviously some sort of something sat in something. That's.
But in Brett's defence, he did. I spoke to him today, and he did say he's a bit like myself, probably worse than me actually. His head's just constantly going. So he said, I couldn't even have a go at it. He said, I think he just snatched, clutching at straws essentially.
But remember, the first image might be the first sort of sense might be the right one.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think that's something to keep in mind. So, in regards to, just before we do the results, guys. So any questions, by the way, in caps, please. And what we're going to do, we're probably going to continue the remote viewing chat for about another, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, and then and any questions on that after that, for the second hour, we'll just take any questions you want. We can have a chat about anything. I know Martin's got a couple of things he's going to bring up as well about current events and technology and patents and that kind of thing that'll be very interesting. So yeah, questions in caps, please, guys, and everything and nothing tonight. We'll talk about that. So without further ado, Martin.
Okay. So
we have a look.
Yeah, 108394115. There you go. There you go. You can see it.
No, that's not that one.
Is it not? No, I've got another one. I have another one for next week.
Yeah. So it's the 1083, isn't it?
Yeah, 1083.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the one. Interesting. Very interesting.
I'm gonna send it to you now. I'm gonna send you a picture of it so you can put it on screen. There you go. You've got it now. So can you see what I was trying to get at? Me knowing the image. Oh, here we go. That's better. You've got a tall structure. You've got lines that are coming off it. You've got movement. You've got, I mean, if you were remote viewing that, you could say that looks like an antenna. You could easily say that that's like a cross that's moving around. You could easily say that looks like a palm tree. You've got, you've got green on it. You've got something tall, high up. It could easily be a building because it's got some straight bits, and a heart pebble, that would be maybe the top bit of that. It's that I found that really interesting. I found that really interesting.
Well, let me just add that. Let me just grab that quickly. It's in here.
I mean, what do people think in the chat?
Let's have a look. Let's see what people are saying. Drum roll, please.
I keep drinking because I've got a bit of a cough. Sorry about that. My voice is not quite there today. So you were sort of hinting with Lee, weren't you, about that, about the rotation and the I suppose the direction of that, whatever he was seeing, which is, as you said, that is interesting. Now we see that. Let me just put that up. And what about the palm tree?
So, yes, absolutely. Yeah, the palm tree.
Yeah, and an antenna that could easily be an antenna with aerials. And you had the lines going like this, and lines like this.
Yeah, very true. Actually, I've done all right.
Even the cat in the house. A cat is sat in the house. There's people sat in a chair there.
Yeah, that's
maybe
true.
That's. So... I don't. Sorry, Brett. I don't want to. But
there's a cat though.
But you can sense tall. You can see it's daylight, it's sky, it's green. So there's some green there. So could that be the people sensing a garden? We've got the movement, the rotation. We've got the kind of the cross or the structure with a big round bit at the top. Taj Mahal, white. What is white? The Taj Mahal, and it's got that big coloured thing at the top of it, that big dome. That your brain could absolutely pick up and detect something that looks like that as the Taj Mahal.
Yeah, and also we had that entry. I can't remember who it was. Now let me just skim through. Oh, it was from Kristoff, and that sort of butterfly shape. You see the red diamonds, the white. That sort of shape. You could easily pick up on that.
Absolutely, I said Kristoff had got it quite well. But also, if you thought those diamonds, you know, you can imagine those people are coming off the central structure, aren't they? Kind of like that.
Yeah.
I found that really interesting, Kristoff's one. But the diamond bit is really interesting because it's exactly on that kind of carousel wheel kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, even the lighthouse sort of vibe as well. I mean, like you said, there's a lot of things that your mind could interpret that as. Yeah, it's really interesting, actually.
And the sails of a ship, you've got that kind of triangular, you know, the things flying off it, you know.
Yeah.
And it's tall, you know, and its movement and the rolling of the rolling nature of it. That's kind of why I was thinking that wasn't necessarily all bad. You know, it's clearly not on the sea. It's clearly not on water, but there's blue in it. There's a blue sky. There's movement. There's rotation. And what do people sense with blue sky and rotation? A rolling ship.
Interesting.
You know, there's interesting elements to it, and so it's not all bad for those who didn't completely get it right.
Yeah, I mean, I think, like you say, I think I'm actually quite chuffed. I think between those of us that have entered, I think we've done all right.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think as a cohort of individuals, if I'm the scientist looking at it, there's been actually a good spread of information come through. Some of, like at any sort of normal scale, there's some people who've not done great, but there's some people who've done incredibly close. But there's actually quite a good bunch in the middle who've got reasonable. And obviously, as you progress, everyone gets that little bit better. But as a cohort of people, you could use this cohort to remote view things, and you're probably going to get something close to accuracy. You know, with some people doing really close, and you know, I found that really interesting. And we had a good amount of people, which is really good. I love that. I love that. People really excited to do it.
Yeah, well, if you didn't enter this time, guys, please do enter in the next one, because I'll be putting the numbers up. Martin will show us the numbers tonight, but I'll be putting the numbers up in a post on the channel and on Facebook and all the rest of it, and we'll have another go at it, because I this is something, you know, I think we can all spur a little bit. We could all actually. This is using the time to do something like remote viewing is probably good for someone like me who's got a busy mind and it's always going. So it's probably just good to try and just take some minutes, you know, 10, 20 minutes to one side during the day or even in the evening and just relax, actually. So, you know, no harm can come from it, can it? You know, just quiet the mind for a little bit.
No. And
as John's saying here, Martin, would you put any, or do you know of any coaching that might be available? I know you're busy like the rest of us, so.
Well, look, I mean, I'll happily come along the show if you want me to pop in once a week or whatever. There isn't. I don't know if there's any specific coaching services or people that do it, but you can go online, and there's obviously groups that do remote viewing as sort of a hobby and a bit of fun. You can. There's the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which is in America. So there's a guy called Dean Rabin who I find fascinating. He's a scientist. I think he's a psychologist who works at that place, and he does a lot of that research involved in the unusual components of science. So doing this consciousness experiments, these sorts of things, where how does consciousness affect the material world? And he's a scientist. He's doing it in a scientific way, objectively. So for those who deny these sorts of things, he's the kind of guy that disproves it. And he's got a lot of research. If you read some of his stuff, it's really interesting. He's got some books too. If you can get him on your show, amazing. He'll take an hour or two, and you'll be fascinated. And he's on YouTube as well. You could go to him. There's the on iPhone and on Android. You've also got the I have a few things actually on my thing. It's called Remote Viewing Tournament, which is pretty good. Mm-hmm. And then there's obviously some other bits about remote viewing, and there's also ESP Trainer, which is quite good. Again, I think it might be Russell Tyler that created it, which is where you have, I'll pull it up for you, 4 colors, and it's your ESP trainer. Essentially, you decide what the color might be. I haven't done it, so I haven't sort of sensed it, but I'll press a button, and you get it was actually red. Okay, so you do the colors, and there you go. I got it right. It was green, and it gives you an image and a positive a positive feedback. So with this remote viewing or any ESP work, when you get a positive outcome as part of the feedback, as the monitor, that's what they call them, operator or monitor, the person convening the remote view, a good component of that was to give you positive feedback, much like a dog gets a treat for doing the correct thing. Your brain gets a reward for doing the correct thing. Now, with this ESP trainer, you get a ring and a photo to say, well done. And if you get, and I'm not bad at that one either, I'm pretty good at that one, quite good at intuition kind of thing. If you get above sort of 9, 10, 11, 12, it gives you an outcome saying, oh, good for Vegas. You could try to do a bit of, you could do some good gambling. And over a certain level, it actually gives you a number to ring to speak to someone because you've done so well.
Right.
Yeah, so people could have a go. It's quite fun. And I think Russell Targ was behind that one. But the remote viewing tournament thing is the thing I mentioned at the beginning about this negatively marked thing. And if people want to have a go with numbers that are produced by this guy and potentially have a chance of winning $10, 10 quid, you're not going to be rich, but it's quite
it's just an incentive, isn't it? Some people need an incentive, yeah, but cool. Sounds really interesting. I'm going to have a look at that. So, and out of interest, Alison Buttle, Alison Buttle's asking, have you had any scary experiences from remote viewing when you were doing that 2 years?
No. So it's an interesting question, Alison, because when you're doing this remote viewing, the numbers obviously are trying to target you to a benign subject, and obviously, when you have a target, it has to have unique characteristics, as I mentioned at the beginning. The numbers are part of the way that you target the image, but the image also has to have certain characteristics. If you were, say, scanning, you would say, so scanning, remember, Alison, is where you give a coordinate. So you were asking about coordinates at one point. Can we do coordinates? That's fine, as long as you know whatever is there is benign kind of thing. The stuff on the Third Eye Spies film, they mention about, and this gets weird. I understand it gets weird. They mention about how some of the Russian psychics would imagine themselves remote viewing you and then choking you or stopping you from breathing. And they would then have someone stop breathing. Now, I'm not saying that's real, but this is what Russell Targ says. He's an eminent physicist. He's a laser specialist. He's done this with the Navy. Clearly, he's given an 80-page document of research. He's not going to come out with some rubbish that, makes him seem like a complete fool. So, so I take it seriously in the sense that it's a good story. It's an anecdote. I would love to see some research on it. I'm sure no one's going to do some research on it because ethically it would be completely inappropriate to try and choke people. I hear tell when I do research and look at the subject that some of the operatives were told never to remote view anything that looks like a blue pearl or light blue pearl. For some reason, that seems to affect your conscious mind. I don't understand what that's all about. That sounded really weird to me, but I've always purposefully made sure if I see something like that, I don't go anywhere near it when I'm remote viewing. When I remote view, I generally tend to get into a position where I'm calm and collected. And I get this, as I said to you at the beginning, this kind of orange ball in my mind's eye at the beginning. And my ear starts to do this weird clicky thing. Don't get me started on what that actually means, but it seems to do this weird kind of pressure thing. I don't know what that means. I don't know, because someone's going to say it sounds weird, and it does sound weird me saying it. I know that, but when I get good results, I get the orange ball and I get this weird clicky thing in my ear. Don't read anything more to it than that. That's just my detection process that I'm in the right zone. But yeah, I mean, remote viewing seems to be. I mean, I believe in it works. I've seen proof of it. I've got quite a lot of dollars because I did well on it. So there's proof on it in terms of my bank account. Not enough to buy anything big or anything, but 50, 60 quid or whatever it was. And then a couple hundred quid. But the proof is that obviously these people have cornered the silver market. They've done these things. They've remote viewed and spied, structures that they weren't meant to do, causing havoc in the military in America. According to this film, if you read the penetration book that I mentioned earlier about Ingo Swann, not Ego, Ingo Swann. he discusses about how he remote views the moon. Now that's weird as hell, right? About how he remote views that it's got atmosphere to it. Now, I don't know if everyone knows this, and I'm sure people know a lot about the moon, but it does have atmosphere. It's even recorded in, I think, the Annals of Astronomy of the UK government in 1930 with their primitive telescopes. They see fog around the moon. It's really weird, but it's true. It's there. He also remote viewed, I think it was Jupiter, before the spacecraft went round it, and he remote viewed that it had rings around it. And then obviously the spacecraft that went past it, went past it, detected the rings around Jupiter, which no one could perceive or see. And he had, I think, another sort of 17 or 18 different points that he remote viewed and said before the spacecraft went by that were accurate, according to the scientific data that the spacecraft sent back about the planet. So it's very interesting. There's definitely something to it, scientifically speaking, from my opinion. Some people say I'm crazy, but I think there must be. And I think we don't know an awful lot about a lot of things in science, and this is one of those things which seems to have merit.
Yeah, I'd totally agree with that. Lee's just asking there, do you think the longer you do it, the better you get, and how long should a session last?
Yeah, absolutely. The more you do it, the better you get. The research says that you can be pretty good immediately, but it doesn't mean you can't be better as you get practice. So I got better the more I did it. I began to understand what my brain was telling me, or picking up, not telling me actually, because telling me would say that I was listening to the story of my mind, but it wasn't. I was interpreting better the more I did it, and I was getting better outcomes. Sorry, what was the second question? Second part of that question.
How long do you get? Yeah, how long should your average session be?
So SRI were doing it for about 15 to 20 minutes. As I say, with that first access, they would have a quick, well, it could be anything from 30-second or a few seconds break to a few minutes break after that first image, download into your brain, and then they would have access to 3, 4, and 5. But it would take about 15 to 20 minutes. And if you were trying to do a telepathy approach, which is where it's got a specific name. There's a process you can do using telepathy where you try and imagine what the picture is, kind of sense the picture. I was giving you a bit of that in the first round when we did it, but I was hoping that people would have ideograms, and they did, which is good. That takes about an hour and a half, and their research seems to suggest that it's not as accurate as doing an SRI validated, SRI objective technique, which looks at these bit grabbing rather than the whole image. I was going to say something there, I forgot it. Go on, Karen. You'll come to me.
In the meantime, John's just asking, is the process linked to waves as opposed to particles or protons?
Yeah. So, well, what do I know? Who knows is the answer. But you, as an objective scientist, I would suggest that, well, look, some people say it's about entanglement and some quantum entanglement, something like that. The SRI people seem to suggest that there's some sort of conscious connection immediately when the image is connected to the numbers. So that would imply to me that it's not just quantum entanglement, that there's also an element of consciousness that connects the two. And as you know, I believe that consciousness is well, Stephen Greer would also say that consciousness is unbounded and without place or time. And certainly when one looks at the NDE stuff, you automatically come across immediately that there are, with the near-death experiences, that consciousness is never ending. It is when someone dies, the body goes, yes, that's fine. But then they go to this place of heightened awareness, love. The consciousness is unbounded. It goes across time and space. It's all knowing. You have awareness of all the points in space and time. And that would imply to me that maybe we're connected in some way to that higher plane. And maybe that the way this works is that we're connecting to our higher plane, which is aware of everything in time and place. And that's how we have that awareness. And we're just using a small element, a minutiae of this connection to that higher self. I don't know how it works. If I was there might be a quantum theory element component to it, because we know that consciousness. I'm contemplating. I'm kind of soundboarding to myself. We know that consciousness affects the material world at a quantum level, based on some of the stuff that Dean Rubin has come out with, and certainly Stephen Greer in his work has come out with. He talks about how people do the experiments where psychics think about the double slit experiment, and they make the electrons change as if they were being observed. I'm sure everyone knows that experiment where you observe the electron, it becomes either a wave or a waveform or a particle, and if you look at it, it becomes the different one. And if people think about it, the psychics thought about it, it made a difference. And this is not just peculiar to humans. When they did this with a light source and a plant in a room, where this gets weird, where the plant, where you would have a random number generator creating a light source above a plant. And what do the plants like? They like light. Sorry, I'm getting calls from different people. They like light. So they did this random number generator, which theoretically can also be affected by consciousness. It turned out, well, it might have been the operators thinking about the light, but it turned out that by greater than chance, the light would stay on the plant more even when people weren't thinking about it. So what was thinking about the light? Was it the plant, or was it the operator, the human doing the experiment? I don't know, but it's really weird that the random number generator, when it was doing more ones than zeros, created more light on the plant, and that's not meant to be 50-50.
Yeah,
it wasn't 50-50. It went more to the light. So that's interesting. I found that quite fascinating.
As you said, there's a lot of information coming forward from a lot of different fields that shouldn't be connected, but are suddenly now connected in science, and all the sciences actually combined are now sort of merging it into one. Which again, that shouldn't really happen. But
yeah, and it all comes together. It triangulates together to give you a bigger whole. So that whole thing about the plant and the random number generator, if I say that to someone at work and the doctor would be like, "You're mad, Martin, you're mad." But then you bring that together with the double slit experiment, you bring it together with other elements, the NDE stuff. Jeremy Long, he's the guy that did 5,000 NDEs. He researched all of those. He's really amazing, this guy. He's a doctor. I think he's a cancer specialist. He did research on 5,000 people who did near-death experiences. And he comes out with the same kind of stuff. It's all the same. The unbounded consciousness, the becoming this all-knowing kind of being, and then the love and everything else. And this kind of portal or stairway, the tunnel, all of that kind of thing. I mean, some psychics will say that as you improve through meditation, your spirituality, your vibration, people call it, you see different colors to the tunnel as you go up, because your awareness is different. So the white tunnel might be your novice, you didn't do much meditation, all the rest of it. But those who are more aware, spiritual, kind, everything else, they might have different colors. And certainly when those people who've had NDEs, for example, from the research from Jeremy Long, it would suggest that those people who come back, who've had that kind of thing happen to them, they're more calm, they're less materialistic, they're more spiritual, etc. And they seem to have this lack of fear, etc., about the world, and a great awareness about spirituality and consciousness and its connection. It is all connected from the research that I've looked at.
Yeah, well, Dragonborn's just asking, I only tried once, so can we have more than one go at it? Of course you can. Yeah, you can have a number of goes at it, and we'll be doing some. And I'd imagine if you look, there's these sorts of experiments are going on all over the place. And as you said, you've mentioned a couple of apps, so I'll do some digging around. We'll do some digging around between us, and we'll get some information in the description here, and I'll stick it up on the Facebook group as well, just so we can, for those interested who want to delve deeper into this, there's plenty of stuff to do for sure. So Lenny's in. Hi, Lenny. Lenny's saying, "Hi, Martin. Sorry if I missed it, but what do the numbers symbolize? What do the numbers symbolize?"
Yeah. So the numbers are actually random number generated. So as I said, well, on the first envelope there, I just asked my son to shout out some, and for the second one, I've asked Chris to shout out some. They are random numbers, but apparently, when you connect them to that image, there is some sort of connection. I don't understand it. I don't know how they figured that out. Well, I do know. If you read the Ingo Swann book, he says that he suggested it was a good idea to have these numbers. And it seems to be 2 sets of 4 numbers that allowed Ingo Swann to try and connect to whatever image that he was trying to do. Now, how we figure that out, I don't know. But they're random numbers. They're not specific or peculiar to that image. There's no connection to it. The whole point is there isn't a connection to it. It's just so that your brain can target the image. If there was a connection, that you'd then start piecing things together. Oh, well, the number 8 is associated with, I don't know, China. I don't know, whatever it might be. So it must be the Great Wall of China. I don't know, right? But those numbers are actually random generated.
Well, it's interesting. Again, just looking at Lee's comment here in the chat, and he's saying you can see exactly why the military have added it to their to-do list. I mean, of course. But by Lee and all you guys, watch that documentary because it is eye-opening. And I think there's a couple of films. What isn't there a film called Men Who Stare at Ghosts?
Yeah, that was I think essentially based on what these guys were doing.
Yeah.
But obviously that's that's a fiction, whereas the one by Russell Targ is a docuseries, a documentary essentially. And obviously that gives it more credence. This is what the guys who were doing it were doing, and he tells you what happened. John's asking there about, is this a human evolutionary step? Well, I suspect that we've been able to do this ever since. I mean, we know that, for example, if you look at different cultures, so, the Indian culture, Native American, or Chinese, or the Dalai Lama type chaps up over on Everest, they meditate, they sense, they can give you images or knowledge about things. They're increasing their vibration, I put that in inverted commas, and improving themselves. I don't necessarily think it's an evolutionary thing. I think it's just something that we're doing. We're waking up and redoing, which is inherent in all of us. And certainly if it was evolutionary, then you would say, well, there'd be a massive jump for all of us all at once, because it's something that all of us theoretically can do and improve upon. So it's not evolutionary. I think it's something that's there, in my view.
Yeah, totally right. And Tanya's just asking there, do you meditate?
I used to meditate all the time, in the sense that I was doing remote viewing. I just had, I've got a few things going on at home, so I haven't meditated for a while, but I'm getting back into it. I try to, what I'm actually doing at the moment, which is interesting, is that I heard that consciousness also can be open and broadened by enhancing dreams. So again, this goes a bit esoteric, but the dream state theoretically is, when Stephen Greer talks about it, the dream state is also quite a good time, sort of in that kind of peri-sleep component, that peri-dream component can be a good time, actually, contrary to what you were thinking, Chris, can be a good time to remote view. And I was trying to think to myself, well, how can I improve my vibration, or my meditative state, my general state of well-being and knowledge? Maybe I can improve things and have an awareness of that by seeing if my dreams have increased. So I'm a kind of a guy that would never dream really very much, or if it was a dream, it would be a one-off and it'd be terrible, awful, and I wouldn't really remember it. And it sounds crazy, this, but I went to the local market down in Wembley, and I was walking past the local spiritual sort of market stall, and I looked at these crystals. I don't know if I really believe in crystals, but there's lots of stuff on crystals. And I'm kind of becoming a little bit of a convert, in the sense that when I wear these on my wrist every night, I always dream, always, without fail. And I never used to dream. It's really weird. And the dreams are very vivid. And depending on which arm I wear them on, the dreams can differ, positive and negative. It's weird. Don't get me started. I don't understand it. It could be an internal process, my mind playing tricks on me, creating it in my mind. Yes, of course. Objectively speaking, there's lots of potential rationale. But all I can say is I'm wearing these, I'm having dreams every night, and it seems to be improving my precognition.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people about crystals. There's a lot of people that, well, they are memories. I mean, you got all that research done on the crystal skulls that has kind of been, a lot of people think that that's been debunked, but it hasn't. No, it hasn't. Those people that own those skulls and where they found them, and the experiences that the people that they tour with these things, and people have amazing experiences with them. And the fact that they insist that any crystal has memory, and that memory, our consciousness, which is interesting, can plug into that, and it can. A lot of shamanic people insist that, as you said, that certain crystals will do certain things for different people.
Yeah,
and it's sort of, they insist that it knows your soul's lineage, and it's your soul's history and experience, and it formulates experiences to, that it pushes you down certain paths, should we say? By like you said, by influencing you in certain ways, and dreams is just one of them.
I was
it's interesting that you said that.
Yeah, I was asking about this on the Truth Proof chat last week, and a lot of people came out with some really interesting things. And certainly, this is amethyst, and this is labradorite, and they're apparently increased and heightened spirituality. And I thought that was quite interesting. And certainly, we know that some researchers say that when you ground yourself on the earth, so walking barefoot. Honestly, I used to say, what are these people walking around barefoot? What's going on?
No.
But there's something to it. You walk on the ground, you ground yourself. Apparently, you have better sleep. This guy went far on this. He got a copper wire and he put it in the ground, and he channeled it all the way up to his bedroom, and he sleeps. He sleeps perfectly every night because he puts it around his big toe. Honestly, it's anecdotal, but it's very interesting. Could it be all subjective? Behaviors because the people have done this, maybe, but there's historical story and in cultures that say that walking barefoot helps people live longer when they do these things. We know that does that mean that you start to get the vibration of the earth? And we know that vibration affects cells, and vibration can affect your conscious mind and grounding and all the rest of it. And we know that with all of this new media, we've got our phones, etc. That's giving us new sort of people are suggesting they're getting this interference. And I have patients that come and see me and say, I've got this interference from electrical things, and if I ground myself or I prevent it from hitting me, I feel a lot better. And we know that people can get ill actually if they're very close to electrical power lines and base stations, etc. So there's elements to it. It just depends on how far up the scale of damage you want to get close to a power line, or is it the esoteric stuff? I walk around on the ground and I feel better. Where does the science stop over here, and where does it begin with the damage from factual stuff that we can see? There's got to be some sort of.
Absolutely. I watched that Earthing documentary a few years ago. My wife and I got into it. Yeah, I think there's definitely something in it. If you watch, again, it's like a lot of these documentaries that are sort of suppressed and ignored. I think there's a lot of really interesting information, and it's also one of those things that try it. You've nothing to lose, have you? So there's no harm in trying these things. And if you even if it was a placebo effect, you're still benefiting.
Well, exactly. And as a GP, you get patients who've gone down all of that sort of medical approach. And I would never say don't do the medical approach, but that you then have patients who come in and tell you they've done some crystal stuff. I feel better. They feel better. I've done some homeopathy or whatever it might be, and they feel better. The non-science bits, which are actually becoming a bit more sciencey, actually, are working medically, even certainly in their well-being. And it would be folly not to, as a GP, certainly, to accept that these things are happening and real, and take them forward. But never, obviously, medically speaking, avoiding the medical bit, because obviously that's what I know. But Chinese medicine has been around for thousands of years. Yeah. I remember having a tutorial or talk from a very well recognized Chinese medicine healer, and they were coming out with very sort of, it was all about lines of energy in the body and everything else, and it was very interesting.
Meridian lines.
It showed some reproducible research that showed that some of the stuff that they were doing in China was working. I mean, it's working. I mean, certainly for pain relief. It was an interesting talk. That was quite a number of years ago now, but it still holds true. It was working then, it's going to be working now.
Yeah, just quickly back to the remote viewing. One of the things I sent you a couple of questions earlier, didn't I? I was going to ask you because I was interested. And guys in the chat, just listen to this and put your answers in the chat, because when I wrote this question, I thought that's easy to answer, but it's not. So the first question is, if you could remote any incident in history, what would it be? And that sounds like a really easy question to answer, doesn't it? But it actually isn't, because I was just sat thinking about that after I'd sent them to you. I thought, what would my answer to that be?
Do you know what? There's so many things I'd want to remote view. There's loads. I mean, you could do the whole Jesus Christ one. You could do, when the meteor hit with the dinosaurs. But you could do Roswell. That would be a really good one, because we know the time frame of that. And the same with Rendlesham. That would be really good. Because remember, you all these pivotal points in history, you have to have a clear time frame on it. So what did we say at the beginning of the remote view? It has to have a time frame. It has to be specific. You have to have the location clear if you're going to do scanning, for example. So in that situation, I'd probably try and do something that I know the timing of. So maybe Rendlesham, actually, because we know that was in December. We know what time it was. We've got the tape recordings. That might be a good one to look at. It probably won't be my top one. I'm just thinking off the top of my head, and
yeah, I mean these are subject related, but this could if you can. If nothing is off the table with this, with what we call remote, that's just like you said before. This remote viewing is just what we call it. Yeah. This facility that we all have.
This sense.
Nothing is off the table, then you are bound by nothing. And with that in mind, you could also get into multiverses. You could get into different dimensions, couldn't you? I mean,
you theoretically could do anything if we're saying that consciousness is unbounded in time, place. I don't know. I mean, look, we're going off piste a little bit here, but interdimensionality and trying to remote view different dimensions. How would you even know you were sensing it properly? Because a different dimension probably has different levels of physics, different perceptions. I mean, we know that when I look at you, I see a person, but could actually you be a pink blob? And because my brain works on the fact that you look like you, but in actual fact, in reality, if we weren't thinking as humans, you're actually a pink blob with pink bits for your eyes, blue bits. Do you know what I mean? It's all about how your brain interprets the world around you is what I'm getting at. Yeah. And with a dimension, how would we even perceive what the world around us would look like? And thus, how could we understand what that remote view would be in our images? It'd be very difficult to see. But theoretically, if our minds are unbounded by time, place, and our consciousness is unbounded by time and place, and theoretically dimension, because we're all seeing, all knowing in this higher plane. I don't know.
Well, the other interesting angle to this is that scientists used to think that the universe was contracting, don't they? But they now think that it's expanding, and they think it's those in the know, and a lot of what we might call fringe scientists insist that's because we are creating it. We are creating it. The further we look, the longer we look, the more we see, because we want to see. It goes back to the double slit type of, Absolutely. So with that in mind, potentially you could, and because one of the second question that I sent you was about what would happen if we remote viewed a fictional place or a fictional situation.
Yeah.
And then you started getting results. What would that be? Is that overlay? What is that?
I mean, the first thing I'd say is probably it's overlay, right? Because it's fictional. By definition, you're making it up. But I mean, you just mentioned there about the was it 80 billion light years they used to think it was, and it's now 120 billion light years our universe, right? And they're saying maybe it's bent. It's not like a straight line that it kind of curves round, and so you could get to the end of the universe by going that way across it rather than going. Look, the scientists don't know, and as we improve things like the Hubble telescope, and then you've got the all the new things that are coming on board, you get better science understanding and things change. I think if you were to remote view as a fictional thing, would you create it? I don't think so. I'm going to say no on that one, but I do think our consciousness has an effect on the outcome in this 3D reality. And why I say that is that if you look at Stephen Greer's coherent thought sequencing and his work, he seems to suggest, and it's reproducible, that when you let your consciousness mind go out with the CE5 work, it will draw in other conscious beings or alter things. So one, your consciousness is able to go out and connect with other things, and thus is affecting the 3D reality, either through its consciousness to another consciousness. And so with that, with the double slit experiment and that whole thing about the light and the plant thing, the consciousness there was affecting a 1-0 random number generator. So we know it works. To what level can your consciousness make an effect on the 3D world is anyone's guess. And people talk about manifestation and everything else. I'm sure there must be an element where consciousness is affecting the world around you, but there may also be an effect of, well, now I'm acting differently. I'm thinking differently. I'm behaving differently. So the world is changing around me. It's hard to differentiate between the two. But I think it does have an effect on the on our 3D world around us.
Absolutely, yeah. Welsh Wend is just saying here about the what happens if you do have a sense like blindness, if you got a sense less, and you are blind. Is there any differentiation in the results of someone blind trying to remote view? Obviously, we're not viewing anything. We're just using our minds, like you've said before. So, yeah, has there been any tests done on that?
No. So on the research that I've looked at, there isn't any element of those people with senses that are missing. Although, funnily enough, there are some people who are blind who enhance their hearing, for example, and the I don't know if it's the pressure of the wind or whatever, but they can sense trees. They can't just hear trees; they can sense trees and how big they are and how many they are. Almost kind of like that, you know, almost like a radar. It's weird, but there's some documentaries on it where there's a young chap who was blind sort of from a young age, and he can sense the world around him. I don't know if that's an element of remote viewing or if it's the other senses taking on board, but I found that quite interesting. In terms of remote viewing, the only way I could extrapolate that would be that in SRI's work, they said that if you do almost like if you need to be in a quiet place, that's good. But if you kind of try and hypnotize people, you don't get a good outcome. That doesn't necessarily make any difference. And two, if you give them sort of not a blank screen, but a sort of a wavy screen or something like that, that doesn't necessarily give you a positive effect. Or grey noise, white noise, sorry, the waves or something, that doesn't necessarily give you a positive outcome either. So in that, what I'm trying to get at is if you're overwhelming your senses with a different noise, it doesn't make it better. So removing a sense may not necessarily make it better. I think it's probably because we're not using our senses to remote view. We're using our sixth sense, as it were, our precognition kind of element to it to try and do the remote view. Yeah. But maybe if you've been blind as a child, you don't understand what things look like. So that might have an effect, because you could then say, well, I sense this big thing. I suspect it's a square, a square is this. I think it's a square building. But you wouldn't know what it looks like. So you may have less artifact or overlay because you were blind and you never knew what they looked like in the first place. So you might have more accuracy in that regard. I'm just musing about that. But
this is what we do. So one of the other questions I wanted to ask you was about if you develop this skill. So what would effectively, like you've said, you need details effectively to do an effective remote view. But could you pick a date in time and have a look? One, if you were still alive, who were you married to? That kind of thing. Would that be theoretically? Is there anything in that?
I mean, theoretically, if you've got a time and a place, you can remote view anything. That's what some people have said. I mean, even prehistoric, some people have done remote views of the prehistoric times. Why did all the planets, sort of animals die off? And some people were saying, well, it's not an asteroid. It was actually someone was drilling in. I think this might be a bit far-fetched, but they were drilling into the crust, and it essentially, because it's like a balloon, it allowed lots of lava to go over. I don't know if that's quite true, but you theoretically can remote view any point in time and place. So you could do future. We know that you can do future based on the fact that greater than chance, people are making money doing it or did make money from doing it. I was always under the impression, though, that if you have a material element to it, as long as you're not yourself becoming materially beneficial from it, that it will allow you to remote view accurately. But if for some reason you're getting some material benefit from it, the whole process fails because, I don't know, either karma stops you from doing it, your higher self stops you from cheating the game, I don't know, but for some reason it doesn't seem to work. And maybe the overlay happens then because you're excited you're going to get some money from it, and hence it doesn't let you do it. However, if you were to say try and remote view your wife, I don't know, 10 years down the line, I don't know what you remote view, or your partner, whatever it might be, you'd have to make sure that you remote view the right place. So are you in your bedroom when you're remote viewing it?
Yeah, that's a good point.
How is the guarantee in 10 years time you're going to be in that bedroom? Maybe you've moved. Maybe you've died. Maybe it's black and you don't. Well, maybe you don't want to know. That's one thing. Or maybe, you know, you're not.
And you might effectively remote the view a different incarnation entirely.
Yeah.
If that, if that is the way it works, which I think it is.
It's going esoteric now, but theoretically, the answer to your question is you can remote view in any time or place something based on this research. You can do that. Yeah.
Yeah. No, fascinating. What was that?
It has to be, remember at the beginning I said you have to have a specific component to it that you're trying to remote view. So you wouldn't, you know, maybe you'd have to make sure that you know who your wife is. You know, yeah. I'm remote view my wife at this time in the bedroom. Hopefully she's with me. You know, and I can see what she's up to or whatever. And you know, is she aging well? That kind of, you know, that kind of thing. But yeah, you'd have to have a complete, you know, a structure to it. You'd have to, you know, what's my focus here? Because otherwise you might go wayward and focus on what's on the telly that night. You know, what was the news? You know, that kind. I mean, it might be interesting to see what's on a paper in a month's time. You might want to remote view what do I see on the paper. But again, unless you were a really expert remote viewer and you could really decipher the picture or this, that, and the other, how would you know that you got it right, or how would you be able to rely on that outcome? I mean, look.
Well, yeah, I mean, you make a good point. I mean, there's too many variables, isn't there? But
exactly.
Here's something else to think about. What if eventually, which it will, if it hasn't already, what if AI becomes singular, as they call it, or sentient?
Yeah.
Could it mimic the process? I mean, is that what these other civilizations that have advanced using AI and are now probably completely controlled by AI or using it? You know, if you're a peaceful society, you might be using it as just a tool to live. You know, to look down the road, for example, for comets, or you know, for cataclysms, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. Would that be, if it develops consciousness, which is, I mean, is that even?
Yeah. So I'm not
true consciousness would be the question, wouldn't it? I know we're getting into real speculative areas now, but we always do. So,
well, I mean, look, let's go back to that. So you said that if AI does such and such, well, we already know that. We think we know. Some people say, let's say that some governments have already created an AI computer that war games what things are going to happen in the future. So if this country does this might happen, and they've got big data formats that look at that, data samples that look at that and give you an outcome. First of all, if we've got a computer that is sentient, I'm not convinced it could be, because it's pretty primitive at the moment, in the sense that I think AI at the moment isn't real true artificial intelligence. It's basically looking through data sets and large language models, isn't it? It's not really true.
Ours is.
Yeah, it's not exactly. Well, exactly, but it might. So you come to an interesting question there, because some people are saying that they're using hybrid biologics with computers. So brain cells, it gets weird now, brain cells and large neuron networks connected to computer systems to try and give it greater function, because obviously our brains can deal with millions and trillions of computations a second versus a high level quantum computer that can't get anywhere near that. Even people say it's got amazing amounts of computation. Your brain does far more than that, hands down, without a shadow.
Yeah, it's mimicking us effectively.
Exactly. So then you'd have to then say, well, look, if a military unit or whatever it might be had created a neural network using biological cells, brain cells, first of all, how would they do that? I mean, you'd have to get it to replicate, and we can't do that at this stage, you know. I mean, but they don't necessarily tell you everything. The governments, you know, they're 20 years in advance for aerospace, and they don't show you anything. I mean, look, there's all these anti-grav stuff flying around. I can tell you all about that patent that the US Navy have got for inertial space. The inertia dampening device. I mean, they had that since 2017. It's patented. You can see it, you know, and it looks like a triangular craft, or it can be a disc or whatever.
Yeah, it looks like a
That's your question. Had true consciousness, which I think is unique to things which are alive, then potentially yes. However, I'm dubious as to the fact that a computer would be truly sentient at this stage. Yeah, but I'm open to the fact if it was sentient, then and it had consciousness, theoretically, it could do what any other being that has consciousness could do. If we're saying that a plant can do it, or maybe the operator that's watching the plant can do it, why couldn't a computer with extreme intelligence?
Yes.
Consciousness, not intelligence. Intelligence does not mean consciousness.
Yeah, it's fascinating, really. Going back to sort of like group type remote viewing.
Yeah.
Is it possible, I mean, how would you know, that if you had a large group, for whatever reason, of very talented individuals, which they, you know, Stranger Things kind of vibe hints at that sort of Montauk, you know, all these conspiracy theories about Montauk.
I was thinking about you and me, Chris, these really intelligent lads.
Well, I don't necessarily think it's about that. It's just, I don't know. We don't necessarily know what it's about, how these things, what exactly facilitates the skill, if you like, or any of these other skills that the kids at Montauk that they were developing in them anyway. What if they were just there to remote view something, to observe? Theoretically, could they accidentally change the result of something by observing it, if you know what I mean? So if they were observing, I don't know, the building of some sort of weapon or something like that.
Yeah.
Does the very nature of them observing it change the timeline, so to speak? I know this is a complex question, really, isn't it?
Right. So if we imagine that Russell Targ is correct, and he says that he saw these or heard of these Russian psychics strangling other psychics, that would suggest that a conscious being can affect the structure of this 3D reality. If we had a large number of psychics doing something similar, could that affect the structure of this material reality in a greater way? I don't know. They would have to be extreme. I mean, look, how do you assess how strong a psychic is? How strong would a psychic have to be to change the nature of reality to such a way that you would be able to perceive it, let alone a building? I mean, they were saying that when Ingo Swann was remote viewing something, he moved the needle of a gravitational detector, which is not possible to move, in a building that was shielded.
Yeah.
You could also tell them the nature of the circuitry in that thing. Now, he was one of the best psychics ever to have lived, theoretically, according to what people say and the researchers say. And yet he could move a needle. You would have to have an Ingo Swann psychic level that's above, you know, I mean, it's, you know, comic book proportions to make a difference, probably, which is, and if you could get that, I'm sure we would never know about it. I'm sure the militaries of this world would never let you know that they had that kind of ability.
But then again, they do call it the butterfly effect, don't they? So, well, you know,
maybe. I think you could remote view a building. I think you could probably see what's on the building, listen to what's in the building, according to what Russell Targ was saying. And I think you could probably make some minor changes, but I don't think you could materially make a big difference. unless the difference was a small difference which had a major effect on the outcome. For example, you made the heat of something go up that little bit more than it needed to, and the whole thing exploded. You know, something like that. Like on a nuclear reactor, when they hack the nuclear reactor, they don't hack the rods. They hack a small thermometer on the rod that allows the thermometer to fail, and they don't realize it's got too hot, and then it explodes. Do you see what I mean? Something small.
Yeah.
Was being theoretical about it and extrapolating upon each thing that we've discussed, then yes, in that way. But do I think 10 people in a room who are incredible psychics could make something explode directly just by willing it to happen? No, I don't think so. Otherwise, it's happening. I don't even think people would research it, because they've probably got other ways to do it, things like that, which would be less obvious and less difficult to do and more reliable, probably.
So we've got, you made some good points there. I mean, we've got about 25 minutes left ish, guys. Wow. So if you want to, just throw us any questions, anything random, ask us anything. Either of us, just about we could talk about anything, current affairs, drones, whatever you like. So Tino's asking me, will I be doing any more conferences at the Bury Fusiliers? Probably not at Bury Fusiliers, because it was a little bit small, to be fair. But I only used it as a sort of a last resort. Nice venue, but it was a little bit small. I think it only held 100, and I think it's something that I'm toying with this. In fact, I can't go into detail about it, but I was asked about this yesterday by somebody, so stay tuned. And I know Paul has also talked about this, so it doesn't seem, I'm looking around, and it doesn't seem to be that a lot of people are I don't think we're ever going to see a really big conference like Awakening again. Because I know, because I was part of it at one time, or at least I worked for the guys that ran it, and it was people didn't realize that was a very expensive conference to put on, and people used to say and snigger. I would hear them talking about, that conference must have made a fortune. They didn't. Trust me, they didn't. They didn't make any money doing those conferences. So as a business, and anyone, I mean, a lot of you guys here in the chat have been to conferences. They're difficult to organize. There's so many variables: food, parking, hotels, you name it, international speakers, flights, so much. But at the same time, you think that would put me off, but it doesn't, because I know that people want these conferences, and I think I enjoy going to them. And everybody that I speak to, and I think we need an opportunity to all get together at least once a year. I think you could do it more than that. So stay tuned. I'll definitely be putting some information about that. What's that, Chris? What's your thoughts on? Yeah, did you hear about that, Martin? What Brett saw that night when he came up?
I heard something. I was speaking to Linny about it yesterday night, actually. But yeah, maybe for the group, because it'd be interesting to see your take on it. What happened there?
Well, to be fair, as usual, I'm just looking at something else. But Brett, ironically, picked up on this and saw this sort of shadow entity figure thing that Paul and Linny had been, and Bob, I think, as well. And I think Andy, even a while before that, Andy Ramsden had witnessed this thing. So what it is exactly, I don't know. But Brett picked up on it. I mean, you don't seriously think Mr. Sensitive's going to see that.
In the right view, weren't you?
Well, I mean, the problem is, obviously, Lenny will contest to this. When you start looking through those monoculars, whether it be thermal or night vision, whichever one you're using, the minute you take that away, you're blind. You can't see a thing. You're already in the dark, and you've just been looking at something artificial, and it just blinds you. Then you're useless. Then, I mean, if something happened, I'm doomed. I've just been running into the fence.
Well, stick behind Lenny. He's huge. He's our mountain.
Well, there is that. Yeah, I just get in Lenny's pocket.
Shout out to you.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you'd go for the biggest one, surely, wouldn't it?
I hope so.
What kind of a monster are you? Yeah. So yeah, interesting. And it's again, look up there. I don't know. And another thing that we can talk about is that I don't know if you saw. Did you see the recent shot I put up against about the Geiger counter that we took up there that time? Have you seen that one?
I was watching the bit where you guys were at Speeton and all the rest of it. But no, tell me a bit more about
Yeah,
it.
there's a recent one I just put up. I think it's the last one that I put up, and I just pulled a few clips from Anomalous and the Bempton phenomena and bringing down the light, and just Paul and I are going to start talking a bit more about and doing a bit more of that stuff, talking about our experiences and his cases and stuff like that in proper sit down format. And we were talking about the Geiger counter, and that was weird, really strange that we carried that around for 4 days. And although it's an adapter, but it's still got the tube.
Yeah.
Still got a proper tube. It's obviously not going to be amazing, but it still did nothing for 4 days. And the only time it registered is in the 2 locations where there's weird stuff going on. So right. I'm just not having that as part of a coincidence. And then when we bought a very well-respected Geiger counter, I think I went back up about 6 weeks later. The results weren't anywhere near like they were, but it was still registering residue.
Yeah.
I mean, what's that about?
Coincidence, I find, is usually not real. I think it's usually there's something going on. You can triangulate things really clearly. You know, there's weird phenomenon. People are seeing it. Lots of people are seeing it. You then get unusual electromagnetic components going off. There's something going on. And if you've got a Geiger counter with, I don't know how many millisieverts it came out with, but I would say just be careful when you're out there. Because, I mean, obviously
480, which is high.
Yeah, it's high.
Yeah.
That's high,
yeah.
mate.
Very high. Yeah.
I've said to Paul, he's got to be really careful because, you know, sometimes, you know, I won't say, you can get manifestation of radiation damage. So you have to be really careful. And obviously doing what we do, certainly you and Paul more so, because I don't get to do it much. There is risks. You got to be careful and you got to take precautions.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things that obviously it's the kind of thing that you can't prepare for that, really. I mean, it was so random. I mean, we had a reading of about 100, I think, when we were looking at the deer that Paul found 6 weeks previous to that. So a reading of around 180, 100 is still very high for something that happened 6 weeks previous.
Yeah, and you got to be careful because you're only allowed a certain amount in your lifetime of millisieverts of radiation before it increases your risk of cancer greatly. Even those people who work in radiology have a higher amount they're allowed to have, but above a certain level, lifetime allowance, they then have to stop working. So you have to be careful. I mean, on those cliffs, I mean, Paul's mentioned to me about, you know, weird heat coming from out of nowhere, and you just think to yourself, well, is that radiation, or is that microwave radiation, or is it some other electromagnetic radiation? And I do worry about Paul and the people who go up there regularly. Ian as well. Ian, be careful about, you know, is it causing you any damage, any harm? You know, because you used to get the people who worked on the Navy ships. They would be trying to keep warm, and they would sit next to the radar component because the microwave radiation would heat them up.
Wow,
you know about that? And I was thinking to myself, they're basically being microwaved, but it's warmer, so they want to be warm on the ship. And that was I find that quite interesting that maybe something like that is happening here. And you know, you think to yourself, well, often they incorporate in military transmissions microwave transmission because it's more protected, etc. And obviously big banks do that as well. And you just wonder, maybe is Bempton a pathway for some of these transmissions? Certainly, maybe from some of the I'll say naval goings on the coast. Could there be some transmissions from things in the sea to land which are microwave based, and then could they be harming people? I mean, the military is not going to want to do that purposefully, but how do they know if there's people on an isolated cliff in the middle of the night watching for UFOs?
Yeah, I mean, the interesting thing about that is, like, I don't know if you guys listen to this, of everyone here does watch Truth Proof. If you don't, you should. So just pop over to the Truth Proof channel and subscribe to that. But with that, it just reminds me of the evening that when Paul, Bob, and Steve, years back, before I was ever up there, or Linear, or any of the guys that go up there now, I think they were one evening. pitch black, as you know, you've been there. It's pitch black. You can't see a thing. And I don't think we had any of the equipment then. We didn't even have night vision at that time. I don't think years back he didn't have. He just literally had. I think he might have had the Sony maybe. And he noticed that a black Range Rover had crept down the field right up to the fence and just sat observing him. And I think for years, and I've said this to Paul, I think they're observing Paul. I think they'd be foolish not to observe Paul because he's the guy he's the only guy really taking all the sightings up there. So, back in the day, I'm pretty sure now, we remember the MOD guy that we interviewed that came forward. His job was to observe up there. I'm pretty sure there's other guys up there whose job that is to do nowadays. It would be, why wouldn't they? I mean, it's a little bit easier these days because they can monitor little podcasts like us, and people think, oh, well, we're insignificant. You think about it, you're not at all. And that brings me back around to what Lenny filmed the other week.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up.
Yeah,
that you mean you're talking about the invisible orb, essentially?
Yeah.
My goodness, what incredible footage that is!
It's incredible. Yeah.
Well, shout out to Lenny. Well done for that capture. And you think to yourself, well, look, it's not visible to the naked eye, but it's giving out electromagnetic radiation, which you can detect on a thermal camera. And that's been up there silently, heavens knows how many times, observing what and why, who knows. And it has uncanny similarities to the stuff that's going on in America. Uncanny. It's a large, almost spherical or square-like appearance. I mean, if you look at Lenny's stuff, I mean, it'd be nice if Lenny was on talking about it with us. But essentially, with the naked eye, you can't see it, but you can with thermal. It looks almost like a plasmoid. So I'm sure people know what a plasmoid is, but essentially it's a plasma ball, essentially. And I was speaking to him yesterday about it, and I was saying to him, well, how do we know that that's actually the nature of the thing inside the ball? For me, that capture is of the energy around whatever is inside that thing. So I mentioned that inertia device, that's on a Navy patent. 2000, I think it's 2000. I can't remember. I can't remember when it was done. But you can go on 2006. You can go onto the website, the Navy patent website. They've got everything on there. They've got flipping weather control devices. It's crazy. And the way that that's written is that you can create an inertia device which counteracts gravity, inertia, and thus gravity, to allow you to go at faster speeds. Now, if you can counteract gravity and inertia, you can theoretically go faster than light, because it's gravity, the gravity component of the faster than light travel that stops you, because you need ever increasing amounts of energy to propel yourself, because you have an ever increasing amount of mass as you get faster and faster. So if you can alter that gravity or inertia, you could theoretically go faster. And they do this using 3 microwave emitters. In the patent, it's got a triangular shape. It's got a positive resonance wall on the outside, which gives a polarization wall. It's got a cavity in the middle, which has no polarization at all. And it's got a completely non-conductive inner wall. And what it does is it creates, I mean, I'm not a physicist, but you can gather essentially what it does is it disrupts space-time at a quantum level on the outside of the ship, allowing for the ship to not be affected by space-time in its local vacuum. Okay, so if you could liken this to it disrupting the air outside a plane. So when we were flying a plane trying to get to Mach 1, speed of sound. The air would push against the plane to stop it from going faster.
Yeah.
What we did there was we would use different materials, made the cone, aerodynamic, etc. And then you would go faster than the speed of sound, because you'd be able to push the air out of the way, the molecules of air out of the way, because they were a barrier. What this seems to do is it seems to dispel at a quantum level space-time around the craft, almost like a bubble. Where we heard that from, In the actual paper, it says it causes phase changes or phase shifting. Where have we heard, in which films have we heard it's phasing out of existence or in existence? Where have we heard that from? To disrupt that and allow you to be unimpeded by space-time around or in front of the craft, giving you a negative gravitational energy, allowing you to go faster theoretically than light, one, and two, you get a bubble of pressure behind, gravity behind, pushing you. So in my book, this little bit of fun, I created a capsule around some of the protagonists that would push them and have a negative pressure in front of them, almost like falling into gravity, which this thing, if I understand it right, seems to do. And I might be wrong, but that's what it seems to do. Now, if you can go faster than light, that then means that you can have faster than light travel and thus have beings from different planets. I know Paul thinks they're all here, and I think they probably are here as well. And possibly in the sub-universes, he's coined the phrase. In the sea, because we know that in America a lot of these orbs are coming out of the sea is what they're saying. Again, I'm not coming out with rubbish. This is what we see on YouTube and we see on the news, that there's large groups of these orbs or whatever coming out of the sea and across the American United States. Could it be that some of these things are military? Maybe, based on this inertia device. Yeah, could be. Could Lenny Steen be a inertia device, and what he saw, this ball of energy, be the spherical bubble that would go around such a craft? Could it be? Maybe. And perhaps maybe we're saying this and the military is listening and thinking, damn, he's divulging all of the secrets. Maybe we are important, but you've got to piece these things together. So it's not all connected just by consciousness. It's also connected by happenstances. There's no coincidences. And you can go down the rabbit hole and say, oh, it's all just, theory and stuff. But we've got a craft that Linny's picked up. It's anti-grav. It's detected. We've detected it with energy sensing device, i.e. heat. Are we detecting a energy bubble around the craft because we can't see the craft? And it's pulsing and around, and perhaps maybe that's what we're seeing. And if you see a plasma ball, you see this pulsation, this rotational movement of energy in a plasma ball, and that's why they coined the phrase plasmoids over America. And I think if you remember in the truth brief that I did with Paul before about plasmoids and energy manipulation and turning it into structure, you heard about plasmoids in that one. That was as part of the thunderstorm energy device that I did some research on, and which is quite interesting. But that's a whole new matter in probably another half an hour. But essentially, could we be just looking at the outside capsule of one of these inertia device mechanisms, bearing in mind that when you look at the patent, it's not just a triangle. It can come in a disc format. It can come in a diamond format. The way they write it is as if they've made it. I mean, like literally, it needs to have aluminium. It needs to have lanthanum. And who do we know someone who picked up a piece of lanthanum by any chance after a crash and a retrieval program happened, and they sent it off to the to an American lab for testing?
Is that the Welsh one?
Yes. You remember, and that was lanthanum and aluminium. And if you look at this patent,
Mark Ollie investigate that.
Mark Ollie. I didn't want to say his name in case I caused the problem. But yes, Mark Ollie, he comes out with the data that he shows that he sent this piece of material from whatever craft it might be. Could it be military? Could it be UFO? Who knows? It was made of lanthanum, and what's in this patent? Oh, it's lanthanum and aluminium. And how close a connection do we have to say there is before we start piecing something together and say, could there be something more than just, happenstance or circumstance? I don't know. It's interesting. I find it fascinating. And the more you read, the more you learn, the more fascinating it becomes.
Well, when I look at that design, and obviously there's the TR3B, isn't there? But there's more, probably more. I think there's different designs, but it did remind me of are you familiar with the Colin Saunders case?
No. What's this one? Oh, I probably know it, but I don't know the name of it because I'm terrible.
I remember the very basic. He gave a great lecture actually at Chris Evans' conference a couple of years back, and I think he was driving home with his family from the restaurant. I think maybe about 9:30, 10 o'clock, and they came upon one of these craft, and it was just sort of sat on an angle.
Incredible.
And he could see it has like what would you imagine, like it looked like a giant circuit board on the top of it. That's what it looked like. And there were, I think in his design, I think he talks about coolant running over its surface. But to me, it just, the more I look at it, and I thought it when I heard the lecture, to be honest, just because I've come across a lot of cases like that. And it's all the witnesses that Stephen Greer has spoken to, and there are hundreds of them actually.
Yeah.
They would definitely say that that's one of our designs.
Yeah.
No, we can't know for sure. I mean, what's interesting about Colin's case is that I think Colin said that he might have had contact or some sort of telepathy going on after that, which again, that's a very interesting side to the story. Yeah. So maybe it wasn't one of ours, or maybe it was. Who knows? You just don't know, do you? It's and when I say one of ours, again, that's difficult. I mean, you mentioned craft coming out of the sea earlier, didn't you?
Yeah.
Now we've got to remember that we it wasn't possibly, some of these places weren't always underwater. That's the other thing to think about. When we look at archaeology, we're dealing with, we're trying to dig our history up by dealing with about 20% of what we've got. And even most of that is hidden. So imagine the archaeology in years to come, what we will be finding, under the ocean when we've developed the technology to do so, to dig under there and really excavate these things. But I totally agree with you. I think that when I saw that, what Linny had filmed, I mean, again, my instinct's pretty poor, but I just thought, that just looks like someone's observing there, whoever it might be. It just seems to make sense that it would, and I think, like you said, very frightening, really. If you're Linny and Paul and Bob and all those other guys going up there, you'd be thinking, how often has that been there?
Yeah, can you imagine if they're outside your bedroom window one night?
Well, that's the other thing.
Unless you've got camera, you're not going to know. I mean, hopefully it's our tech and not someone else's. If it is tech, and if it's not tech, then what do these things want? What are these things? What are they interested in? What is it special about us? Is it this conscious nature of ourselves that these beings seem to be interested in? I mean, if you look at Stephen Greer's work, it appears to be that consciousness is an integral part of not just flying craft. His whistleblowers would say this, not me saying this, or him necessarily, but he will tell you about his whistleblowers saying that. From what I've seen on YouTube, etc., and I'm sure people have seen these things too. Is it consciousness that they're interested in? And thus, if we improve our consciousness in terms of our ability to sense things with things like remote viewing, can we get this better connection, if that's what we're looking for, to these beings? I mean, I know for some people, they won't want a connection to them because they'll have had a negative interaction. I know Paul's had negative interactions, but for some people, they're positive. I mean, we're trying to do this triangulation tool with Paul. And a shout out for that, please. If you've got any contacts, you've had any objective things that have happened to you, by all means, go to the Truth Proof website or send it to me, aliendisclosure@aliendisclosure.co.uk. A report, you can make a report by just emailing me, and I'll send you the questions. And what we're trying to do is triangulate not only the nature of contacts that people have, but with the why of the contacts. So in there is a number of questions, such as not just where it is, what happened, and the nature of it. Was it alien, cryptid, whatever, ghost or paranormal, whatever, demonic, but also the nature of your experience, but also what you were like at the time? So were you hungry? Were you thirsty? Had you had a stressful life event recently? Were you the subject of these things before? Have you got family members? Are you in the military? You don't have to answer that question. If you are, don't worry. But lots of questions, about 30 or 40 questions, which would help us triangulate, fingers crossed, the nature of why these things happen and what is attracting whatever it is that's connecting to us, the phenomenon, we'll call it, to those who are experiencing this issue. So we haven't had an awful lot of responses. I think we're in the 50, around the teens at the moment, which is ridiculous because we've got 200 people watching. And each episode can be a single contact report. So we could theoretically have thousands. The more that come in, the better the nature of the outcome. The data sources, it gives you a better outcome. If you've got more people, it's more valid. Trying to make it scientific and objective would be helpful for those people who want the phenomenon to happen and for those who don't.
Yeah, well, I think I looked at that and I definitely think that can relatively easily nowadays, using a simple AI program, that can be developed into an app straight away. I think that form, it can be, I think it's a few clicks and you can develop an app just to really simply so that people can just download the app and do it that way. I think I just think it'd be, then you're opening the floodgates then a little bit to, you're broadening the search, so to speak. More people got access to it.
I'm up with Paul because the way we did it initially was we were trying to keep it obviously very anonymized. It's going to servers which are highly encrypted, etc. And I'd like to make it that, because for some people they don't want details to be open, etc. Obviously, there always a risk there with an app is that could there be some hacking, whatever. But of course, we could create that for those people who are not that fussed about. I'm always fussed about data, and you'd always hope that nothing would go astray. But you can always create something that, if people were willing to use, understanding that there might be some minor risk there, that they could put something in, even if they didn't put their name in. At least we get the data. And it may be some, I did it initially because I was trying to do it on a Word document, the old medical school technique, try and get it done and try and give people a reason.
Yeah, but no, you make a good point though, Martin, about like you said, data protection. It's everywhere now anyway. So exactly. Like you say, you may well be liable to things like that. I don't know, but it's certainly something you can look at, isn't it? And it could be relatively inexpensive, I think, as well. So
any way that get it going better would be helpful. But essentially, that's the what is it, the consciousness that they're interested in? Back to that question: is it our the nature of our own selves that the entity is interested in, or the phenomenon is interested in? Or indeed, if it's military, is it because they're interested, they don't want things to get out, or they're interested in our own? If they can detect psychic phenomenon, who knows, they can. Are they interested in those people who are up there, who may by very nature have had contact with the phenomenon and thus be more open to things like precognition, and their psychic awareness is increased? I don't know. There's got to be a reason for it. I don't know what that reason may be, but you can postulate.
Yep. Right. Well, I'm being hassled here, so
there you go.
Yeah, so I think that brings us to the end, mate. But so thanks, look, Martin, thanks very much for coming on tonight, and
absolute pleasure.
I've really enjoyed it. I think it's taught me a lot, and I hope people watching it's taught them a lot about the process, and it's not, I don't get dissuaded from. Yeah, actually, good point. Before we sign off. So for those of you that are in the chat now that want to take part in this, I'll be obviously following this up with some stuff on Facebook, and I'll put it on the community posts on YouTube. So just take note of these numbers now. This is the next experiment. So it's 4521-2233. So let's and we'll reveal the results on the next show. I'm not sure when that will be just now, but I'll keep you guys updated, and there'll be more shots coming out in between then. But yeah, so I'll get those numbers up there, Martin, and I'll get. I'm really looking forward to getting started on that. Having to go at the next one. Now I've learned a little bit just in this 2-hour session that we've been chatting back and forth about various things. So it's been really helpful, and I really appreciate you helping Paul and I with this. It's been great. So
if you want a leaderboard, let us know, and I'll keep the images so that if those people who won this week, or what that person that won this week wants to have a little reward. That'll be a positive outcome for their remote viewing, a positive feedback. They'll get the image sent to them. If they're willing to give their address out, I can send it to them by envelope.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know who do you want to pick a winner at this stage?
No, I think we should have a confab about this, Chris.
Okay.
Because there was actually quite a few that were pretty good, but I quite like the whole rotation thing from Lee, although that antenna was pretty good, and the palm tree. I guess it'd be probably one of them three, probably.
Yeah, tricky. All right, yeah, we'll have a chat about that, and we'll let you guys know what we decide. So, also, I want to thank Lorraine, my wife, for moderating again tonight, and thank you guys for tuning in. Again, it's only been me and Martin tonight. Hopefully, fingers crossed, Paul will be back. I wish him well, and Martin and I both speak to Paul tomorrow and in the week, and we'll see how he's getting on. And I think Paul just needs a bit of a rest. It won't do him any harm at all. So, once again, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the last transmission again, and we will see you soon for another live show. And I look forward to